Hello and welcome to the Claret Blue podcast. I'm your host for this one, Dan, and he's John.
Hello, mate. You all right?
I'm good. Yes, today we're here to talk about Pau Torres. Now, this is one of our episodes of anyone's been watching or listening to the podcast recently where I've got no notes, I've got no questions, I've not even really thought about what we're going to talk about till now. This is, hi John, how you doing? What do you think about this? Today's subject is Pau Torres, probably Villa's most divisive footballer, do you think?
That's really a great question, to be fair, to start. No, I don't think it is, actually.
Okay. Is it Ollie Watkins?
I was actually going to say Matty Cash, but I think it actually might be Watkins now you mention him. That in itself is a good debate, to be fair. Maybe that's one for another day. But Pau,
stick that on the notes for another one.
Yeah, but Pau's probably, if you were kind of listing, I don't know, I'm looking kind of like a league table. Definitely become more of a divisive player, definitely since last season, which in itself is interesting.
It's not as strong to say you either love him or you hate him, but there's definitely an element of the fan base that have a dislike towards him, I think, for his lack of physicality or his aerial ability, or there's almost a massive loving for, but he's so good on the ball and he's really important to how we play. And I think both of those things can be true, and it's somewhere in between both of those, I think. We are going to feature some comments from the Mailbag. You might have heard us talk about this on the Q&A on Monday. I've set up a Google link. It's in the top comment of every podcast that we do, where we will say on social media or on an upcoming episode, next week we're talking about this, share your thoughts. I did that this morning for Pau Torres. Somebody misread it as, we've got an interview with Pau Torres. One of the Mailbag things was a question for Pau, because I'd put something like, talking Pau later on Claret and Blue, and they read it as like talking to him. So my bad. We're talking about him, and I've got some fan opinion as well. I've not curated them. I've not been through them. I will just read them at random at some point, but we're going to share our thoughts and feelings to begin with, and then see where the conversation takes us, basically. Yeah. Now, I think going into this, we're both leaning towards the same side, that we rate Torres. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want this to be like, well, we think he's good and you don't, so you're wrong and we're right. That's not the case at all.
It's difficult because Pau is a player who played such a significant role in what we did this season before last, which was the best season we've had for a very long time in terms of what we achieved and what I think we could have gone on to achieve if we didn't have injuries. I think we would have won the Conference League if we were as fresh as what we were last season, and we had those lone players then. It all came a little bit quickly, I think, in terms of our progression, but Pau's played a key role in that. So when we talk about him in a negative way, I always look back at that and think, well, but he also has big upside, right? So his strengths in terms of ball progression, in terms of what he gives Villa in possession, it's a major tick, like one of the better ball-playing centre-backs in the division, especially on that left-hand side. And I'm a massive advocate for left-sided centre-backs and right-sided centre-backs. I think Emery is the same, because we often get questions of, well, why can't you play two left-footed centre-backs? I don't think it works, just in terms of how you receive possession, how you move it from there, your body shape, and then that influences how the opponent presses, that sort of thing. So Torres, from a value point of view, for Villa, he has high value, especially for Emery, and also I do think his stock would be really high for many of the teams in European football. In the Premier League, I'm not too sure. And
I think that's really interesting.
That already answers part of what we're going to talk about. But in Spain, I think a lot of teams will be taking him in Spain. If you look at someone like Clement Lenglet, who for us was the backup to Pau Torres, but is now playing in one of the best defensive teams kind of known around because of the manager, especially in Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid. I think that already tells you how Pau is viewed or would be viewed in Spain. Yeah. I know he doesn't always get in the national team, and that's something that he really wants to pursue next season. I think people accept that he's a good defender, but nothing much more in terms of the outside. Whereas within Villa, I think we're acutely aware he's fantastic at one thing, but then the most important thing from a defensive point of view, and in my opinion, I don't want to say let the team down, because I think it's more than just Pau.
Yeah.
But certainly if he was as good a defender as Tory Mings, he'd be an exceptional footballer.
Yeah, I think what you said there is really interesting about how he's viewed in Europe, because I think it's easy to say that a Premier League side is by default one of the best sides across Europe because of the strength of the Premier League. Yeah. However, I don't think Pau Torres would necessarily improve a Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Man United. Well, Man United, it would, but a traditional big team in England.
A team above us, yeah.
However, pluck out almost any European side, Milan, Juventus, Barcelona, anyone that kind of is a different style, I think it does work in a sense of like, could play for a good European side, but not necessarily a top Premier League side. Now, look, we finished 4th with him playing a lot of games for us in the season before last, so he's clearly a good Premier League player as well. I think we touched on it a little bit in a previous video about the style of play in that season with the high line versus the defensive style of play last year doesn't suit his game. To be asked to defend and sit back a little bit. But if that's what Villa are, and that's what Villa have to be to scrap for every point in the Premier League, Pau doesn't really suit that. What he suits is being further up the pitch and having lots of possession and dictating the game. But how often in Premier League matches are Villa dictating the game with 60, 70% possession? Not very often. How often do PSG do that? Or Bayern Munich or Milan or Inter or whoever? Most weeks. So I kind of feel like the transition there would be easy for him to go to a top side for 60 million and be unbelievable. And we go, why can't he do that for Villa? But I think the style of the environment is very different.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I can't really add much more to that. I can see him, as you say, they're done playing for one of those sides who have more dominance in the division. And naturally, if you're going away to that club, the opposition team will sit back and they will play in a certain way to try and, stay in the game or adopt a low block. But Pau Torres would be one of the better players you'd want on the pitch to, break that down and pick the lock. So, yeah, I think that's something that we definitely saw last season as well, in terms of we did our starting position, our back line was much higher. We had much more territory in the opposition half. And you can see it now, like Pau Torres and all the different kits that we wore that season, picking up the ball on the left, head up, scanning, looking around, picking out a key pass. And if it leads to something, only if he has to do it once in a game and it leads to something, that's enough to warrant your place in the team, for Emery at least. But yeah, this season we do, we have changed. And I always go back to the goals we concede. It's far too many. The season before last, we conceded an incredible amount of goals. Last season wasn't as many, but also we were on that trajectory up until Tory Mings had more of a run in the team, shall I say. So there's a chance that we could have got to that many goals that we conceded the year before last anyway. That's a massive worry, because when we did get to the Champions League and finished 4th, we also scored loads of goals last season, not as many. You don't want to be relying on scoring X amount of goals in a season. What you want to be able to rely on is that defensively you're secure. And it's interesting.
Easier to control. It's easier to control not conceding than it is creating chances.
I think so.
Like, you're mapping out how we want the league table to look. We want X amount of points and X amount of wins, X amount of goals scored and conceded. I think it's harder to manufacture. We want to get to 70 goals, but it's easier to say, okay, we only want to concede 40.
Yeah, and again, but if Pau Torres is one of your key players, it's almost like a tipping point, isn't it? If you have Pau Torres, okay, he's going to start, 25 to 30 league games. Already you're thinking, well, your objective is to probably outscore your opponent rather than keep clean sheets. So it's an interesting one, because when Emery came in, obviously we hadn't paid too much attention to what Emery's teams were doing before now. Obviously it's Seville, Villarreal, PSG, Arsenal. But every time, if you asked us then, I would definitely say this is a manager who wants to kind of set up from the back, but also be defensively resolute from the start. This isn't an Ange Postecoglou who wants to score 3 goals in the first 10 minutes, that sort of thing, and just go for it. Equally, while we're not that extreme at the moment, it does feel like in Emery's tenure at Villa that we have definitely been a team who wants to outscore the opposition rather than keep a clean sheet. Obviously, we've shown that we can do that in the back end of last season, in the back end of the season, where we finished 7th, we showed it as well. So we can do it, but I do agree with you that I think in terms of how we set up, that has a large bearing on keeping a clean sheet, or obviously scoring 3 goals to win a game.
Let's do some of these mailbag comments then. I've not curated these, I've not gone through them, so I'm just going to pick some at random. There's been about 15 comments on him when I post this out this morning, which is pretty good. I'm not even sure we'll get through all 15 because some of them are quite long. Literally dive straight in. Will from Worcester, just because that's near me. He was unfairly criticised at the end of last year, likely came back sooner from his injury than he would have wanted, owing to our centre-back injury crisis. His passing range helps us cut through the press, and he showed just what he can do against PSG in the home leg. Now, I think that's bang on from Will. Do you think there's anything in kind of almost maybe a bit of a recency bias thing that 12 months ago, I don't think anyone was really criticising Pau Torres that much? Villa just finished 4th. He played lots of games. It was his first season. He's come in for Tory Mings, got a terrible injury. Well done, Pau Torres. I think is the general consensus. Last year, not as good. Villa, not as good. don't finish as high. He gets his injury. He's had 2 injuries, hasn't he? Or 2 decent spells injured in both seasons. Could be an argument to suggest maybe he came back from that sooner than Villa would like or he would like because of us having so little depth at that time. Does any of that kind of play into the narrative that, oh, he's not very good or I don't like him because he wasn't good in that spell rather than his whole time at Villa?
Possibly. Again, we've definitely seen a shift in how fans perceive Torres, but I think that's more because Mings come back and been so good as well.
Fair.
I feel like we've been on a bit of a journey of trying to work out why are we conceding so many goals, because on paper, as I explained earlier, Torres, in terms of how he's viewed, and by the way, Torres is a top player, like he really is.
Yeah.
But in our team, what's not working? Because we have the French left back, or probably the deputy French left back, Luca Dean, who we know has been incredibly consistent. We also have Ian Matson there. We have Ezri Konsa, who we can't speak highly enough of, and I think will be starting for England in the World Cup next summer. Emi Martinez, Emi Martinez was considered the world number 1. Is now probably not that, but one of the best keepers in the world. At right back, there's always been a bit of a discourse, but sometimes we have played Konsa there, who again we know is possibly the best one-on-one defender in the Premier League as well. When Carlos was playing at centre back alongside Torres, I think that was a weak link because we know Carlos wasn't quite at the level that we needed at that stage. But then you've also got Boubacar Kamara, one of the best holding midfielders in the league and in Europe. Like, there's a lot there to think, oh, that's a really like strong base to build on. But what's not working then? So I think as soon as Mings comes back and you're keeping clean sheets and you're looking at a defender winning aerial duels, making key clearances, blocks, all these different things, I think then it's quite easy to look at Torres and think, well, maybe that's the reason why. I can look to that and think, well, maybe that is the reason why, because Emery hasn't found quite a solution, I guess, to consistently stop conceding goals with Torres in the team. When Mings comes in, we have kept clean sheets, and last season we didn't lose without Mings in the side and in the Premier League in the 14 games that we played. So that's a massive tick for Mings. I just think I'm looking for a solution of why we are conceding so many goals, so many more than our rivals. That's that one part. And then the second part is, well, is it personnel? Is it the way that we're playing? So those are all the questions that I think point to why, well, is Torres the issue here?
This video, I think, will be titled around him being a divisive player or whatever. I'm going to read 2 comments here that I've scanned through to put these together to kind of make a point. Pau Torres should be our starting centre-back. He's proved his ability on the ball in games, for example, second half against PSG and playing Duran through against Bayern. This could be a good option when getting Watkins running in behind. That's from Neil.
Both of those, just quickly on that, Dan, both of those games are obviously European games, and those are the 2 examples, and 2 of the best examples. I don't know if that's going to be a question later. But again, feeds into the narrative of in Europe.
That style,
I do think this player could play for almost anybody, and would suit that style of play in the Premier League. Possibly it isn't. In the top 5 leagues, would the Premier League be least kind of effective for Torres to use his skill set? I think that's maybe a question. Which, again, does not make him a poor player or anything like that. We know he's a top player. Is he a top defender in the Premier League? No.
Do you reckon that Tory Mings is best suited to the Premier League of all the other leagues as well?
Yes.
If we boiled it down to that's what it is. Tory Mings is good because he suits the Premier League. Pau Torres suits the European matches. But you can't have a player like him who's only going to play 10 games a season in Europe, obviously.
Yeah, and it's difficult because you've got... If you said, if you're building a squad, would that be a good thing that you have, 2 of your players, one of them suited really well for European games and you want to go far in Europe, the other one suited really good to Premier League games? I think, possibly. But we want a consistent defence, don't we? One that we know...
Chopping and changing isn't for me.
Yeah, neither. So, and again, Torres is at the level where he can't just be sitting out Premier League games and coming into playing... Betis in the Europa League and that's not his level. He'll move as soon as that happens because he knows he could play for most of the teams in Europe. So that's why it's an interesting debate as well.
This one's not. This is from Twitter. And it's the only one I'm going to pick from Twitter because we're trying to make this mailbag thing work. From Dudley, I'm in the controversial section in that I think he's rubbish. No pace, no aerial ability, not good at reading defensive situations, and not a leader. I honestly couldn't care less that he can ping a reverse pass to one of the midfield. That's one of the few.
That's the alternative.
Yeah, I'd say negative. And I'll put that in air quotes because that's more to the side of he's rubbish, no pace. That's quite negative, I would think. I don't think he's rubbish. However, that is kind of the point made from the other side of the argument, if you want to call it that he's a defender, pinging a ball into Yuri Tielemans on the half turn or lofting a ball over for John Duran. That's not really what he's in the team for. That's not really his purpose.
But he is. But again, that is his purpose in this Emery team, though, isn't it? That's the point.
But is that enough to kind of put up with again? Stuff, if you like?
Are we questioning? We're not questioning his involvement in the team, or I'm not anyway, because we know that that's what Emery wants. But what we can question is that suitable for what we're trying to do, which is to concede less than this amount of goals, because we can't guarantee scoring X amount. So interesting. I think the points that was it Dudley said there, I think they're a bit extreme in terms of he's not rubbish in my opinion, and he can head a ball, all of those things. However, can he do it as well as your average centre back in the league? Maybe not. Can he do it as well as Mings? Definitely not.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it comes down to.
But his on-the-ball stuff is far better than the average centre-back and the best of Villa's centre-back options as well.
Yes, and I go back to, if you look at Mings and Torres, the trade-offs for Torres, I think, are greater than what they are for Mings. Yeah. And if the best thing that Mings is providing for me is leadership, defensive quality, all of those different things. Put it this way, Villa's chances of keeping a clean sheet for me are quite significantly higher when Tory Mings plays than Pau Torres. In terms of scoring goals, I'd like to think that still with Yuri Tielemans, Morgan, all those different players that we've got in quality and attack, that we're still capable of scoring goals without having a few kind of dynamite passes from Pau Torres. And as good as they are, I'd like to think that we can do that anyway. Again, going back to where I was, I said many weeks ago that even at the start of next season, and I said, I don't care who we play, and I'll say it again now that I know who we're playing, Newcastle at home, I want Mings starting that game because that's the best chance of not conceding the goal in that match. Did Mings play against Newcastle when we beat it 4-1? If memory serves me correctly, I'm pretty sure he did. He did start. And I think Isaac may have had a bit of a niggle at the time, but he was absolutely anonymous. He really was.
Anonymous?
Isaac.
Oh, sorry. Sounded like Mings played in that game. He's completely anonymous.
Make sure the audio brings that up. that would be really confusing for people then.
We talk about chop and changing, and I agree. This thing of Konsa always plays, and it's Mings or Torres every week. We don't know which one it's going to be. Certain opponents suit certain players. Are we in Europe or not? To me, that maybe this is a thing now in 2025, 2026 football, that this is how you use a squad, you change it, but in that position, it just doesn't sit right with me for some reason. I'm going to offer you a potential hypothetical. Rather than changing, Konsa's always there and you're picking from two, do we need another version of Konsa? That Konsa and Mings is partnership 1 and Torres and new centre-back is partnership 2. And if you are going to chop and change, it's not individuals, you're changing the centre-back pairing every time. Yeah. Does that work better, or is that even more crazy?
No, I understand where you're going with it. And if you have to ask me now what would complement Pau Torres best, it would be a very athletic, aggressive defender.
It's a right-footed Tory Mings.
Yeah,
effectively.
Yeah. I think the solution to getting the best out of Pau Torres is simply playing him in the games where his skill set is most effective. Because I think
the problem with that is that we don't know that. Yeah. Like Old Trafford on the last day, Man United rubbish. Surely we're going to have loads of the ball. You play Pau Torres. Then when you start the game and you don't have loads of the ball, then what? You bring Torres off?
True. I actually would have started Mings myself, and not in hindsight, but Mings should have started at Wembley. I think for Torres, it's home matches where you are going to dominate, vast amount of possession, basically at home to a side who are in the bottom half of the league. And even then you've got issues with, what if they hit you in transition and all those different things. But you can ask many questions for many days about what an opponent is going to do to you. It's the Premier League. Everyone has got a certain level of quality. But I think Torres, for me, if I was manager of Aston Villa, Tory Mings would be my first choice centre-back. Because again, clean sheets, I think, are king. And that's where you have to build your team off. However, there's certainly a place for him in this squad. Absolutely. Because in the Europa League, I think it'll be really important to have his skill set. And as we've already discussed, against European opponents. And also, Mings, can you rely on him for 38 games in the Premier League? Possibly, but he'll probably be in pain after all of it. So you'd like to take the load off him and make sure that he's physically ready to go. So obviously, Torres would still come in for many matches. But for me, Tory Mings would be my first choice.
I'm going to read out 3 comments here on the partnership. No name on this one. The more I see it, the more I think Pau and Konsa can't play together. They don't complement each other. Ideally, you need a destroyer and Pau, which is why Mings and Konsa works well. Yeah. Mings is not our best centre-back, but works because he complements Konsa. I hope we sign a destroyer, right-centred centre-back, and then when Pau plays, they play with Konsa on the right, or he's rested. Basically, what we just said, you changed the partnership rather than an individual.
And it's right, like, on Konsa, he is more, I don't want to call him a passive defender. He's an excellent defender, but he's not front foot, like Christian Romero sort of defender. He's a very, again, I said it, he's probably the best one-on-one defender in the league. I think
more like a Van Dijk kind of.
Yeah, as in
reads the game well. And
he reads the game exceptionally well. You've got Bukayo Saka after England training. Him and Konsa will go one-on-one and just have little drills against each other. And Saka himself is probably the best one-on-one defender out there. And the stats back it up in the Big Five leagues. He's got he's well up there every season for the amount of dribblers that he manages to tackle. So if you kind of boil that down and say, okay, this is Konsa, that's what he gives you. What do you need? It's probably the opposite of Torres to a point.
Yeah, this comment from Ash is basically kind of along the same lines, that the Konsa and Pau doesn't really work. So I'd sell him for PSR reasons and get another centre-back in who maybe fits more in the Mings type to rotate that player and Mings next to Konsa. Otherwise, I think we need a physical right centre-half who can play with Pau so we don't lose aerial presence. And the final one, just on kind of partnership to an extent from Sean, I think it makes sense to play Pau as a left-back in the similar way that we did with Konsa at right-back. It means Konsa Mings could play centre-back, Pau slightly advanced and able to use his passing range, and then the right-back is able to push forward. Now, I get all that on paper, but what happens to, at the moment, Luca Dean is with us. We spent a lot of money on Ian Maatsen. We need a right-back more so than we need to bolster left-back. But the idea of the idea of Torres doing what Konsa did last year and flipping the system, I get that, but I don't think we'll see it.
Yeah, for two reasons. The first one there, as you just said there, Dan, you're changing. That's wholesale changes and a lot of money really just to do that. And also I don't really see the benefit because Pau's passing range is obviously fantastic, but that's because he can use the left back over the top like we saw for the Duran goal, like that space, and for Watkins against Palace, a switch across the pitch towards the right back, a punch into the centre midfielder. If he's playing a left back, his options are very limited already. He's going to if you look at where he's going to receive the ball, he's either going to have to go back, he doesn't have pace to beat an opponent, or he's going to go into the middle of the pitch, or maybe flick a ball around the corner. Like there's not a lot of variety there for me. I think it's pretty easy to stop Pau Torres' passing ability if he's playing a left back.
And I think I'm surprised it's not come up in this, but you see it all the time. Push him into midfield, then play him in the double pivot. If he's so good on the ball and he's not good in the air, push him in midfield next to Kamara or next to Tielemans. But firstly, again, you're not going to see that happen. And I don't know enough about top-level football to spell this out properly, but being on the ball in a centre-half position with the game in front of you, and you can basically have your time to do what you want to a degree, rather than being in the centre and the defender pings it into you and you've now got a 360 view rather than just looking at the game. That is much more difficult, and I can't imagine. Yeah,
it's a completely
good on the ball.
Completely different skill set.
It's a different kind of passing, isn't it? It's pinging balls over the top versus little reverse passes and being quick thinking. That's not, again, it's not going to work. I get it that people are trying to almost shoehorn. We need him in the team because he's very good. Mings is better in the air than Torres. Put Torres in midfield. Well, we've got better midfielders that are better than Torres in midfield.
They're non-starter for me. It's I think we've been asked this before.
We get asked all the time, yeah.
No, it's that's far too easy of a solution. You'd see players playing in all sorts of different positions throughout the career if that worked.
Yeah. Okay. This is a long one from Steph. Pau Torres is underrated by much of our fan base. His impact on the way we play has been transformational, and that's been forgotten by reactionary fans. He's absolutely key to our progression as a football team, but his physical drawbacks raise difficult conversations about Ezri Konsa. A Konsa-Torres partnership leaves us aerially exposed unless Onana is playing. As much as we love Konsa, he wouldn't be playing as our right centre-back if Mings was right-footed, due to how well Mings could complement Torres. That's why I see us chasing a physically dominant right-sided centre-back, which means either Konsa drops out or moves to right-back in games where Torres plays. We all love Konsa, and if he was a few inches taller and maybe a bit stronger, he'd be a perfect foil to Torres, but he's not, so the questions remain. Either way, Torres is absolutely key to our build-up and someone we should be building around instead of reverting to the tried and trusted that need to be upgraded upon anyway.
I think that's a really good comment, because that's the kind of alternate here. It's we've gone through. Pau Torres gives you this much, and it's this good, but we're viewing that in the lens that Ezri Konsa doesn't move, and that's a player that you build around. I agree that a Tory Mings version at right back would possibly be our best partnership. If Mings was right-footed, Mings and Torres, fantastic. But then for me, you have to play Konsa at right back then. And the limitations there, I think a lot of people say that there probably are.
Yeah.
I'm not that against that, to be honest with you. I thought when Konsa was playing right back, clearly there's some things that he can do or he can't do that other right backs would. But then that is the kind of trade-off for getting Pau in your team. But for having Pau in your team, as the question says, you need a dominant right-sided centre-back. And that, I think, in Emery's view, was, okay, well, that has to be Carlos here.
Yeah.
It wasn't, because his body couldn't afford it. He would break down far too easily. So I think it's a really good comment. I think the two options Villa have here was the one that I preferred, if I'm being brutally honest, earlier, in terms of you play Mings and Konsa, because we know it's tried and trusted. It works. We keep clean sheets. They know each other's game back to front. They're on and off the pitch, very close. And then Torres is a player that you bring in for games where you need a bit more possession and you don't need to be worrying too much about a clean sheet because you can score 2, 3, 4 goals in this game, or a European match where, again, I think Torres excels. That's the one option. The second option is what Steph says there. And I think it's a really good point, because that kind of opens the debate up a bit more into, well, I don't want to say the problem, but is Konsa the problem? He, for me, absolutely isn't, because, as I say, he'll play for England, I think, in the World Cup, or has to, should be starting. Tuchel loves him. Emery loves him for reason as well. But do his skills complement Torres? And I think we know that Emery is so kind of wedded to Torres, which is, again, fine. He brought him in. He played for Villarreal with him. And we know why he picks him, because he wants to play in this certain way. So Torres, everything that he brings, you may concede this amount of goals. However, if you bring in a new centre-back partner with him to play with him, maybe that amount reduces by average. If you played 1,000 games, what would that look like? That would go down, I think. With Konsa, it would probably stay as it was. Yeah. It's really interesting. What I would say is that centre-back also has to be the perfect centre-back, and that's very hard to recruit. Villa tried to buy Bade from Sevilla last January, which again kind of goes to what Steph says there about maybe that is the sort of player that we need. And clearly we've been looking at it as well. What I would say, though, from what I've been told from within the club, that ship is sailed now. Bade, a player who didn't want to join back in the winter, and Villa have kind of moved on from the situation. As of now, things can change. It's football, it's transfers. Things change pretty dramatically, in fact. But right now they have a long list, which Bade is, or they had a long list, maybe he was on it. But that list now, whatever that looks like, how many players, Bade wasn't on it, as far as I've been told in the last, recently.
Just on the kind of Konsa versus Torres thing, if you like, in a scenario where one of those is moved on, not necessarily saying now, but under Unai Emery's Aston Villa tenure, I think it would be Konsa. And I think some might view that as the wrong decision. And it may be the wrong decision, because I think Konsa is the better defender. But I think if Emery was to build a new defensive unit, I think Torres is an absolute shoe-in, and you find somebody that complements him. And currently, as we've said, that isn't Ezri Konsa. Now, we all think Ezri Konsa's been here since 2019, 2020, whatever it was. A very good footballer, will play for England, a Rolls Royce, all these kind of things. We know all that. He's definitely in there. Well, if he's not definitely in there, are you better off finding somebody to complement Konsa, who at the moment is Mings, but he's 32, 33? He's had his contract extension, but that's not going to last forever. No. Or do you stick with Pau Torres as he's Emery's man, if you want to call it that, and you find somebody to complement them? I touched on this a little bit in one of the episodes we did. It was the one with the overhead camera of kind of building the squad and who stays, who goes. Yeah. You might see a sale at some point that is like, ooh, didn't expect that. That's not one we accounted for. I won't be massively surprised if one of the windows, that was Ezri Konsa, because you get big money for him. He's English, and Emery can build a new defensive unit in his vision rather than kind of trying to piece it together with what he's already got.
I definitely agree with what you're saying. My only counter to that would be that, can you build around Torres, who I also don't think will be here for, put it this way, I'd be shocked if he was here for another 3 years. He turns 29
in January.
In January, yeah. And he said himself that he's very happy at Villa, and last season's frustrations about not getting the Champions League, not showing up against Crystal Palace in the FA Cup, He wants to put that right. He's kind of done the rounds, those quotes about how he wants to achieve everything essentially next season. But then also said with an interview with AS that returning to Spain is definitely something that I'll be excited for. But right now I'm, focusing on Villa, and this is my objective next season. So highly likely to be staying this summer, Torres. Again, never say never, but he's definitely not planning to leave, put it that way. But after this season, he'll be 29. 30th birthday won't be far away. What do Villa do in that situation? Because they have an asset there. They know Atletico, Barcelona, even Real Madrid. I don't know. These top Spanish clubs, Bayern Munich wanted him previously, Juventus wanted him previously, came close to signing for both. He came relatively close. They certainly were after him before Villa signed him, and he wanted to stay in Villarreal for that Champions League season, just like Unai did. But what does the market look like then? Do you cash in on a player who's turning 30 and kind of group at Villa? The transfer committee will kind of honour him, I think, in terms of if he says, listen, I'd like to return to Spain. Do they say, no, we're going to build a team around you? I don't think it works like that. I think they would probably honour that and say, well, okay, you're turning 30, you're on this wage, which will be a lot, because prizing away from Villarreal in the first place would have been difficult. And they would get a decent transfer fee, I think. Or, as you say, would it be Konsa? And that, would probably make a larger transfer fee and would boost that. But I don't know. Again, this is in the vision of Unai, as you said there, Dan. But how long will Torres be here? I don't know. I'm not certain that he'll be here for many more years anyway.
Oh, Ezri Konsa is 28 in October. Will he be here for another 3 years?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You kind of, the age catches up with you with Konsa. You always think that he's 25.
Well, he's already been here 6 years. Is he going to have a 9-year Villa career?
Well, who knows? Maybe. Yeah. When I interviewed him a couple of months ago now, I was looking at where is he at in terms of league appearances, and he'll break into the top 10 of Premier League Villa appearances next season, which is something pretty special. It's not even far off John McGinn's Premier League total. But I don't know. I would still say that Konsa's value would be more than Torres, even though their ages aren't too dissimilar. I think it's more versatile. Konsa is obviously English as well.
Okay, it's funny that just being English.
Wait, it does, yeah. I also think he can complement players better, Konsa. I think Torres' profile is much more rarer, but you have to, as you said then, Dan, kind of build around him. Konsa, I think you could basically slot in and say, well, there's a top defender that we've got now and who is very useful on the ball still. 2 comments then to end this show. He can be painful to watch as he doesn't fit in with what we've grown up expecting of a centre-back. However, all of our best performances, City, Arsenal, Bayern Munich, have come with Pau starting. So if we can play to our best, he should be starting. And a final one from Zach. While I appreciate Pau's long pass and through ball abilities, he just does not play the physical games very well in comparison to Mings. Several games at the end of the year, I was scratching my head as to why Unai went with him over Mings, same, to be honest, especially when opposition had a very physical forward, like, say, Mateta from Palace. I also think Tielemans gives us a lot of these through balls and he always plays. So again, would rather be stronger at the back. I think that's sound, to be honest. Both really good comments again, by the way. The final one I resonate with more because, and again, when we started the show, we were saying, why is it that Torres is now quite divisive? And we spoke about, is it recency bias? Partially, but also like accurate recency bias. He was poor against Palace, Torres. He shouldn't have played some games last season that Mings should have played ahead of him. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that opinion. And again, what I said, I'm going to stick with. There's certainly a player from in the squad. I don't doubt that whatsoever. It's a very unique profile of player. And I think where you want to stock those players. Anana's unique. He's unique. Morgan Rogers is unique. But also you need to have players who you reliably trust to influence an outcome of a game. And that is your player like Ollie Watkins, who will score X amount of goals in a season and make X amount of assists, although he's criticised sometimes. And for me, Mings can fall into that category as well, of that he's going to win these aerial duels and have a key role to play in a campaign if you give him enough time to. And even last season, again, 14 league appearances because he had injuries and whatnot, is a relatively big sample size, but nothing, in a normal campaign, Mings should be playing almost every game. That's what he'd be hoping for. And even then, he made a really big influence in what we did last season. I don't think we'd have been that close at all to get into the Champions League without him. I genuinely don't. I think we would have conceded. I think we would have conceded quite a few more goals.
Just to tie those last 2 comments kind of together with one more. The previous one said about, in some of our best performances Torres played, And in the other one, that if Mings had played in the back end of the season just gone, maybe we'd have done better. And I think this ties into both. 5 big games we failed in at the end of the season. 2 PSG games. Failed feels a bit harsh, but I get the point.
That sounds really harsh.
I know. Palace in the Cup, Man City in the league. Again, failed last minute. Again, can't take it. And United. One common denominator was Torres playing instead of Mings. If you reverse that, I think we get to 2 finals, brave, and we get Champions League qualification. Now, for me, it's not as binary as that. Mings plays and we beat PSG. We also beat Arsenal and get to the final. We beat Palace and then we get to the final. It isn't that clear cut. However, there's, I'm sure, video evidence of it, of us doing the previews for those final games going, Mings has to play this one. If we're going to keep a clean sheet and we want to be defensively sound, Mings will play. 24 hours later, Torres starts and Villa don't win. It's like, okay. Now, that's not solely down to that, but it is something you can kind of hang your hat on as an armchair fan and say, well, I think if Mings played, we'd have been better. So what's Emery doing?
Yeah, no, I stand by that he should have played against United. He should have played against Palace. I think he should have played against PSG the first leg because it was a back against the wall sort of job. For me, in every game that you play, clean sheet has to be the first objective. Yeah. And then you build from there unless you're, again, second leg 2-0 down or whatever. Unai always says you have to build from a clean sheet first and try to keep a clean sheet, but that doesn't chime to me with playing Pau over Mings. Then I believe what he says because it's true. That has to be the first objective. But are we achieving that? Are we more likely to achieve that with Mings in the team? I think we are. He also says a lot about obviously dominating the ball. That's how you can control a game. I don't know though. We've seen how Nuno controlled or influenced games by not him, but his team defending extremely well and just blocking passing lanes, blocking opportunities for the opponent. And that, in a way, is controlling what happens in the match just without having possession of the ball. So it is interesting and there's different ways to view it. But again, I think this is something that will just continue to roll on into the new season, and
I agree.
This will become more of a divisive thing, and this is a conversation that we'll be having a lot. So I'm glad that we've kind of got it out there.
We've done 40 minutes or so. Are we any closer to kind of solving the Pau Torres problem?
I think we are. I think we are. I like the comment from Steph, kind of out the box thinking a little bit in terms of, well, Torres is the issue here. However, could you look elsewhere, i.e. Konsa, and say that's part of the issue for Torres? So again, if a new manager comes in, maybe he would just view Mings as, I'm going to start you and Torres, you can go now because I want to bring in my own players. That isn't the case. We have Unai Emery. That isn't going to change, hopefully, for a long time. We have to settle with the fact that Torres is Unai's player, and we know why. We play very well.
As well.
Yeah, we play very well in a certain way when Torres is playing. So therefore, let's look elsewhere, and how can we improve the team to help Torres? Well, his centre-back partner isn't exactly what you want in terms of who you're building that player. Konsa is a magnificent defender, absolutely. And I would still play him at right back, and I'd still find a place from the team and play the 3 defenders, etc. So maybe that is where you need to look at. And again, going back into January, in terms of who we tried to sign to replace Bade, it was a much more physically dominant centre-back than Konsa. Konsa is obviously physically very good. He's a top-level footballer in the centre-back. But in terms of how he imposes himself, I think, there's better players to do that. Specific thing, Disasi came in. I think we wanted to kind of tick right back and centre-back at that point. No, so we know that Villa have been looking at right-sided centre-backs for, or up until now, as of 19th of June, and they will, I'm sure, sign one as well. So, yeah, that I think, will probably be a big clue. That what we do there with that transfer, if that's a profile that complements Torres, I think there's your answer. If it's a profile that's very similar to Konsa, then, I'd have questions still.
Yeah, okay. It's been a good chat, John. A good debate, if that's the right word, but we've covered a lot of ground, I think, with the mailbag, so that's already proving its worth.
That's the point of the mailbag, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So anything we talk about in future that you want to have your say on, there is a link in the top comment of every single podcast. You want to share your thoughts about anything, suggest a topic for a show, whatever it might be, get in touch. We want to start involving those listening more where we can. John, thanks for your time. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Claret Blue podcast. Get involved in the comments with your thoughts on Pau as well. And we'll be back next week with a Q&A and some other bits and pieces as well. So thanks for watching. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week.